Well, hey guys, it's been a minute since I posted a video, but I wanted to showcase a few things that hopefully can help some people. The thing I wanted to talk about first is that I'm not by any means the greatest guitarist, and I never probably will be. And I'm not really upset by that. It's just I don't have the time sometimes to put in the effort to play all the time. I do it for fun, and if I don't feel like playing, I just don't play. But I have played over the couple of years, and I've found things that's helped me. So if you're a guitarist on YouTube that plays really really well, this can help you maybe if you're not sure how to dial in different sounds and stuff, or you're someone that's just starting. And I myself went through a time where I was basically having issues trying to find the right sound of what I wanted to do. So I wanted to showcase using your plugins inside of basically your amp. And it's really cool because if you're like me, I started out with an Axe Effects and I had that for like 5 years. And what I wound up doing is, you're playing through monitors and you're trying to mix things and make a song that sounds good. And then you read on forums where everybody's like, oh, the tube amps, that's where it's at. They have the real, like heart and soul of the sound, and digital just doesn't sound good. And while I can't argue at a certain extent, now that I have a tube amp, I really can see why people feel that way, but I can explain it and also give an option of using your plugins with your amp at the same time, which is the coolest thing that I kind of stumbled across. So what I wanted to showcase, first of all, is using your Focusrite, using this, and basically out of the back of your line out here, you take that and go into the effects return of your amp. Just the effects return. This will essentially bypass your preamp, so it doesn't matter if you have it on clean, lead, or anything. It's just whatever is in the back is what's going to be playing. On my computer, I have a setup that I made using just plugins. But before I get into that, I just wanted to showcase using Nolly's plugin here. The main thing you have to do is bypass the cab, because if you don't bypass the cab, then you're going to get a weird kind of sound. And by doing that, having that engaged, we'll turn off this. So all it is really just now if you want to put a noise gate, that might help. You can put one afterward as well to help whatever. And then essentially now this monitor knob becomes your volume. So when you first do this, I would turn it down because you don't want to blow yourself away, because I've done it and it's not fun. So I know that the amp's set up good now where it's at, but this essentially becomes how much volume and level you send to your amp. And if you're not sure, just disengage your plugins and literally just turn on your guitar, and you're going to hear just your DI sound into it. Now when you turn on the plugin, obviously it's going to sound quite a bit different. Now this is exciting due to the fact that basically you have the option of basically changing your preamp on the fly. I've tried all the different Neural DSP plugins, and they all have different sounds. I would say that Nolly and the Natos is probably my favorite, and sometimes when you're doing single note riffs, the Nameless is really fun. I would say experiment, try it out, because this really changes the sound. Like if I had to say which one sounds closer to like the Invective, it's a blend between the Natos and the Archetype Nolly one. And of course, when I do my pedal chain, it almost gets into that Nameless, but not as tight. I prefer more of a saturated, tight sound. Some people like a real dry and tight sound. I go in between, but I really prefer saturation just because it's funner to play. Maybe in a mix, a drier sound will cut better, but it's basically you're just dipping between those fine lines to find out what you really like. The other thing that I wanted to show real quick, and I know this isn't like the ideal video setup, but looking here, if you have never set up a plugin chain, here I have the first thing in my chain when I'm doing a plugin setup. This would be like replicating the pedal chain in a way. Let me show you. I'll turn these all on, turn off the Archetype. And I have this setup where I'm cutting a lot of low end. You can go more extreme, but this is pretty good. I'm cutting some of this to clean it up and some of the high end. Then it hits distortion. And this is where the fun begins, because you're able to go in and design it to be the way you want it. So I have a heavy saturation. I have it cranked for the dynamics. and the saturation here. If you turn it all the way to 100%, you're going to get a very quiet sound, so you'll have to make up the gain on the output. If you turn it down, you'll get a loud sound. So like I said, be careful with this, and also changing this character of some of the distortions. In my opinion, the gentle and the heavy are the ones to go to. And if you shape and cut some of the low and highs, that's going to give you a very amp-like sound. You can try these ones, but be very careful. Like I said, use this monitor knob, because if you're going to change it, you can blow yourself away and literally you won't hear good for a couple days. So I would just say try that out. But these two are my good ones to go with. Shaping the sound before it hits distortion. And then afterward, this is for dependent upon your cab. So these settings here are not going to be probably good for you. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see. I'm using this low to bring up some of the lows, but also cutting at the same time. And these are all particular cuts that I'm using to change the sound for the better for me. This is cutting some of the resonant peaks that come up, and this just gives it a little bit more bite to the sound. And like I said, just playing with that sound just straight up. Which is cool. And then the other thing is I wanted to express is, as you're playing, I noticed something with some of the distortions of the plugins that I'll just play so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is what a sound of a cab is getting, and I noticed with the real amp, it generally does something similar. So if you're having a distortion characteristic, it seems to me that you want it to have more of a fairly flat response and then a roll off on the low end. So it sounds clean, articulate. Just to give you a quick example also, I'm going to turn these off and then turn on the plugin and let you see, I got that on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And now listen to and see the character response of this amp. So what I'm basically getting to, in so many words, is if you want to have a plugin like this, or any of the Neural or Will Putney suite from like not JST, STL, or some of Joey Sturgis, like any of those plugins, like that's cool and all. You get the efficiency of having the plugins and having different things to do at the, having a plugin chain and all that stuff. But if you want to dial in your own sound, you basically need to get something like this, where you can shape the sound however you want. Now you might be saying, "Oh, well, I don't have these plugins, and I don't have the stuff that you've got and all that." There's no excuse. So I'm going to show you a free way of doing it. If you get, now Logic costs $200, but there's some plugins that you can get for free, or a DAW that's for free. But I wanted to show this because this gives you an idea of what you can do. So the first thing in my chain is a noise gate. This is dependent upon how you play. If you're playing leads, you're going to back this off. But if you're not, I would say this is a good spot for rhythm guitars. The next thing I'm doing is compressing a little bit. I'm just getting a few dBs of gain reduction, and that's basically it. I'm setting this can be anywhere from like 15 up to like 25, somewhere in there, just to give it a snap and a quick fastest release. Actually turn off this auto and let this do the work. So, and then also if you have Logic, turn this to auto gain off, and then I turn the soft clip distortion on. After I go from there, I go into this overdrive plugin, which helps kind of clip the DI a little bit. This is dependent on what you're going for. I want the over the top like engine revving sound, so you're probably not gonna want that, but try it out and see if you like it. The next thing I'm using is this plugin. Now I did this by accident, but you can boost like a tube screamer in these frequencies. Try out first, just cutting this low end first, around 350 and around 5K, and then come back in and play around. You can cut or boost. It's up to you what you like to do. The next thing, I'm using a compressor, but I'm not doing it the way that you're thinking. I'm turning off the threshold so there's no compression, and I'm turning on this soft clip distortion here, and then I'm boosting up the gain, but then turning down the output. Now you might be thinking that's kind of wild and crazy, but I'm using that as a distortion. And then here we go. I can use the same one or change it to see if you like the sound. And then I'm doing it again. I'm boosting 50 dBs and I'm turning down, and this essentially becomes your volume knob. So I would turn this down and, like I said, go back to using this as your volume into your amp and your effects return. And then the last thing is the EQ. This is shaping the sound according to my amp and cab. Maybe your cab doesn't have enough top end or is dull. You can push it up, or it needs more bottom end, or you need to scoop it, whatever it is. This is all dependent upon what you like. In my case, this sounds decent. I didn't spend a lot of time tweaking, but this seems to help me for what I'm doing for my sound. And the last thing, like I said, I want you to see the characteristic of the distortion with just regular stock Logic plugins. So, like I said, this isn't per se the best quality video, but I was just experimenting, and I wanted to showcase this because I spent a lot of time myself trying to figure out how to get a good sound, like high gain sound. And a lot of people say, oh, don't overthink it, it's not that big of a thing. But if you listen to just how simple and how crazy a sound can go from a DI sound to high gain sound, if you're not aware of these things, it can basically make your life hell and make it very difficult. And especially if you don't know anything, it's just being in the dark. This has all come from me basically experimenting and trying out things. I'm not saying that my sound is the best sound or I've figured out something no one else has figured out, but I am thinking from a place of there's so many products that are out there nowadays that you can buy when you can actually go in your DAW and basically make your own kind of sound the way you want it, and it shift the frequencies and all that. Like, I think if someone were to design that kind of plugin, it would be the one plugin you would need for the rest of your life because you're able to shape the sound the way you want it. And I'm not saying this in a bad light towards anybody, because I think like there is something cool about getting plugins that have the characteristic of a certain amp sound. But this is more for people that want to tweak and set an amp the way they like. And if you are going for more of a modern sound, then this is kind of the route that to me seems to work the best. If you're going for a more traditional sound, the catch with doing anything is then, like I said, rolling off the low end, maybe around 65 to 85 hertz, somewhere there, or 80. That way it's not cutting too much low end and you get more of the classic kind of sound, but you're getting rid of some of the garbage that the amp doesn't need. There's no rules. If you want to do a fuzz pedal, do the opposite. Boost a ton of low end and maybe cut some of the high end, or boost the high end as well and cut mids. Like, there's no rules to this. This is all according to what you like to do. And I just wanted to do this video because I think it would be helpful for people. For another reason as well, actually, is the fact that if anybody's played through a real amp and you get kind of tired of it, it's not really inspiring. Like, if you play through a monitor, it seems so dull and lifeless at times. But basically now you have the option to play your plugins through your amp and get the real feel, and then you can appreciate how the real amp has in the way that it affects the different sound. You can actually feel the amp-like characteristics that they've modeled. And like I said, if someone were to tell me, if I came into my room and I was playing through one of the plugins and I didn't realize it was hooked up that way, I wouldn't really be able to tell. I might be able to tell if it was a different model, if it was not the actual Invective, but you can actually hear the character of this distortion break up and do things differently than the actual Invective does. So I would say if you get any chance to experiment, leave a comment down below and tell me what you found, or if there's any tips or tricks that you've come across that really seems to work. And like I said, good luck and have fun. And that's the main thing, is just trying to keep, inspiration and being able to continue to play, because sometimes it's easy to lose that, especially if you're starting out and you're not sure like what to do. So if anybody likes this video, please give it a thumbs up, and also spread the word, because I'm curious to see if anybody's interested in me continuing doing videos, because it is a little time consuming, but I also enjoy helping out people, because I wish there was someone like that before when I started about 6-7 years ago. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, hit me up in the comments. Take care.